This is the Grapple of Your Eye podcast, episode 7, Bryony Tyrell. Welcome to the Grapple of Your Eye podcast, episode 7, where my guest today is Bryony Tyrell. I hope I said that right, because every fight I've watched back, commentators have given you, it's Tyrell, it's Rob, yeah. And all that.
That was right. That was right.
I got it right. Yeah, that's okay. And we're going to be discussing her career through the world of martial arts and grappling. So first of all, Bryony, welcome to the show. How's it going? What have you been up to?
Hi, Brett. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm very well, thank you. There's been lots of things going on. Where do you want me to start?
We'll just go through it. I mean, it's your fault this is here anyway. As I said earlier, I mean, after a long period of not doing anything for about 10 years, my friends Lee and Anna dragged me to a MMA introductory course for 6 weeks at what was Exile then. That's right, yeah.
It was,
and it was you and Mo doing the training, and well, I'm still doing things, and it's led to this podcast now. So it's all your fault.
Well, that's great. That's great. I'm very happy about that.
And so from there, so that's how I got to that. How did you get to that, and how did you get to stand in front of me, convincing me to take up martial arts again? I mean, where did it all begin for you? Was it something you watched as a kid? Did it sort of intrigue you in some way and you get lured in, or?
I definitely watched it as a kid. It's a shame I didn't get into it as a kid. I always watched films and kind of copied, Bruce Lee and that sort of thing. But I did a little bit of judo when I was rubbish and just, wasn't very good. It wasn't until I went to university at Southampton that I joined the kickboxing club there. Okay. So I was 19 when I started martial arts and just did that religiously. I also joined the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu club there as well. So I ended up going to Kung Fu from kickboxing and did that for 12 years alongside the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, but I only did that for about 2 years. And then I tried a bit of Krav Maga for a couple of years, and that's when MMA was starting to become popular. It was quite underground before that. No one really knew about it. But at that point, the UFC was getting more popular and things. And they were first allowing women into the UFC, so obviously Ronda Rousey, and that kind of blew up the women's MMA scene. So that's when I moved over to Exile, and I trained there and did most of my fights from there. Alongside, I had amazing instructors. It was the best gym in the city, and I had a really successful career, mainly out of that gym.
So what was it then for all these different styles that you were going through? Was there something in particular like you were looking for, or was it something, because you say you did one for a little while, then you try another one? Was it just that you were just trying to try everything, or was there something missing that you thought it needed?
I didn't really dip in and out. I started with kickboxing and Kung Fu for 12 years.
Yeah.
So I got a black belt in kickboxing, second degree black belt in Kung Fu.
Okay.
The Jiu-Jitsu I only did for a couple of years, because that's when I sort of found Krav Maga, which I found to be more realistic for street. Like, I would say, of anything I've done, if you're looking for self-defense, that's the one to do. The trouble is you can't compete in it because there's a lot of eye gouging, throat punching, groin strikes, all that sort of thing. You can't compete in it. So that's where MMA came into play, because I do
Not
like that
yet.
competitive. Yeah, yeah, you probably will be able
Where
at
it's
some
going.
point.
Got power slap now. It's coming.
Yeah,
There's got to
very
be
true.
throat
And maybe
punching
I'll do
soon or
that.
something like that. Yeah.
But the MMA, I love MMA because it puts all the disciplines together. And I like to think of martial arts as being applicable in real life situations.
Yeah.
That's always what I've been wanting to do, is to know that I could defend myself basically in, well, as well as I could in any situation. The trouble is, if you're just a striker, you get taken down, you got no chance. If you're a grappler and you come against a striker and they knock you out, again, I don't like having anywhere where I've got a weakness. So that's why I do
fair
it.
enough.
Bit of
Okay,
everything.
then. So yeah, MMA is on the rise. You're seeing this happen. What's the vibe like across the gyms and the competitions? Like you say, suddenly female fighters are being taken seriously. Is there a boom in the uptake? Is there a boom in competitions? What's it like at that point? Is it? I imagine it was quite exciting because, like say, people have been waiting for this for a long time.
Oh, at that point when I started, so I was 32 when I started MMA, which obviously is pretty old, but I'd done a lot of martial arts before that. So yeah, it was great. I had big opportunities fairly quickly. I think because I was a female fighter, it was a bit of a novelty, I think, for shows to have female fights. Obviously, the male fights were popular as well, but because there were so few women, they'd sort of reach out, and you get bigger opportunities. You get probably more things, expenses covered, all that sort of thing. So I have to admit, being a female in the sport, I feel gave me more opportunities than if I'd been a man, which is unusual to say, isn't it, for women's sports? But it's, yeah, I got to up the ranks quite quickly, which was good because I felt like I was on a real limited time because of my age. A lot of people say, oh, you can't fight after you're 30 and all this sort of thing. So I was up against it a little bit. Now I think that's rubbish in MMA. But at the time it was just not seen as being something that you could do, especially if you're working as well and you've got children. It's just, you just get written off sometimes.
Yeah. So what was for those that don't know, and there's it's popped up in a few magazines around the country. What's your day job?
Oh, so I'm a nurse. So I'm a leukemia specialist nurse at Southampton General.
And you've got 2 children.
Yes.
And you're doing all this stuff as well. So
yeah.
For all the people that say like, oh, I don't want to get into patriarchy and all that, but yeah, you're smashing it. Let's put it that way. And
it was hard work, really,
I can imagine.
Hard work. I look back and I think, especially as I was in intensive care for a lot of the time, I was doing the majority of fights, which is an incredibly stressful job.
Just to clarify, you're working in intensive care. You're not in intensive care.
No, sorry, I was working. I wasn't in intensive care. No, I was working, and that's a very, very highly stressful job. Obviously, night shifts, long shifts, and then I was training. After doing night shifts and all that sort of thing, and then obviously managing the kids and school and everything. I look back now and I think, how on earth did I do that? It's just because I was driven, and because Tom helped me so much. I couldn't have without him.
So what were the competitions like at that point then? So you're saying a lot of it is it's a sort of, it's been an all-man show. You're now turning up with other female athletes to compete on these shows. Was it, how was that going down? Like, with the crowds, with the people, with the other athletes?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, the first show I did MMA as an amateur, at the time I was so naive. I didn't really know what I was doing. I did, which something you should never do, which basically organised my own fight, and went up to this show in Manchester with my brother and one of the guys from the gym in the corner, I think, because the coaches didn't know about it, but couldn't go. And I've turned up and they said, oh, yeah, so your main event, because everyone loves a girl fight, they said. And I was like, oh my God. It's like main event against this lady, Jenna Rea, who was, she was locally from Manchester, but trained in France and had done like 30 K1 fights, I think. I was absolutely out of my depth, completely naive, just ended up being the main event. I managed to make it to the third round, but I was flinching, I was turning away. It was pretty bad, to be honest, and got TKO'd in the third round. For some reason, after that, I decided that I really like this and I want to carry on, but it was a bit crazy to be main event on the first ever fight. And then since then, I just got better and better. I learned from each fight. I researched the opponents. So, you know, I just continued to learn and continued to get better. And the competition then is not as good as the competition is now, because the sport has developed so much. But, you know, I fought some really good people, especially at pro level, the top in, you know, some of the top fighters in Europe. So I did okay, you know. I'm happy with that.
So as you're doing these MMA fights, but you're still competing in your other combat sports as well at the same time?
What, while I was fighting?
Yeah, or are you just MMA now, just eat, drink and sleep in MMA, or are you still doing all your other things as well?
So now, obviously, at
that point then. So as you're training for your MMA fights, but you're still training all your other things and going to competitions for those as well. So you still
absolutely, yeah. I would say for MMA, and this is what I tell the guys that I train now, is competing as much as you can, because MMA fights, they come up fairly sporadically and you can get quite hurt in them. So you need to do grappling competitions, you need to do interclubs. I did Thai fights, I did K1 fights, I did a couple of boxing matches, loads of grappling competitions. You just got to get out there and do as much as you can. And if you're fighting people in their, you know, a striker in K1, and that's their only discipline, your own striking is only going to get better from that. So I did as much as I could in any style and discipline that I could.
Okay, that's fair enough. So you're doing all that, and then, I mean, that was when, obviously, with training with you and that, then sort of from my memory, I think the biggest one I can remember, there's probably others, so do forgive me, was the world title fight then with up and coming young lady by the name of Molly McCann in Liverpool as well. It's like, you know, you don't like to stack it against you too much, do you? I think it was the Echo Arena, like 12,000 people or something like that. What was that like? Because that's almost going in as the villain, I'd imagine.
I know, I was the villain. It's a weird sensation coming out to 10,000 people booing you. It's surreal. It's absolutely crazy, really, like a weird dream. But I mean, to be honest, it was I don't know whether I regret taking that fight or not, only because me and Molly were good friends when she was in Southampton, and I know she was pretty angry about me taking that fight. It'd been quite a few years since we trained, but we were good friends. We fought on the first Cage Warriors as amateurs together. But the way it happened was basically her opponent for that fight, for the world title, I hope I'm right in saying was coming from Brazil, and the visa didn't work out. Okay. So basically she didn't have an opponent. It was about 6 weeks out. And another gym instructor, I think, that had been approached about it, just came to me and said, well, why don't you do it? And so it was a big decision for me, really, because the trouble with women's MMA is you do end up fighting people that you know or that you're potentially friends with. You know, Kate Jackson, I didn't know, I wouldn't say we're friends, but I knew her well. We trained together.
Yeah.
So these things come up, and I knew that doing the Cage Warriors fight was the only opportunity that I really could have had to get to UFC, which is obviously the dream.
Yeah.
It's the dream. So I sort of justified it by thinking, well, Molly needs a fight. She got signed to UFC after that fight. I am only going to get potentially that opportunity if I win this fight. I'd not fought flyweight before, so I'd gone up a weight division. I took it on 6 weeks' notice. So it was stacked against me, and it's a shame because the build up to it was not nice. I had a lot of online abuse and things like that, which was not nice. I mean, you tell yourself that you don't care and you can handle it and all this sort of thing. You're like, I don't care what people think. But when you've got complete strangers just slating you, you know, saying you're rubbish and, you know, that you're too old and, you know, just all this sort of thing. It does get to you. Well, it did get to me as well. Yeah. So that's the only fight I've ever had that. And it wasn't a particularly nice experience. It was an amazing opportunity. I am glad I did it. I feel sad that I think I ruined our friendship by doing it, but I don't know. It's a difficult one, but it was the most intense experience probably of my life.
I just remember watching it as you walked out. It was almost WWE like. It was just that kind of like, you know, like the Buddha villain type thing. But yeah, but you did it, and you know, well done, because you kept your head up and you went through. And yeah, that's all I can say on that one, really. Fair play to you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd have run the other way, I think. But
I felt like it.
But so going from that then, and then moving back into like the MMA, back into the training. You seem to do a lot more grappling that after that as well, and I mean that sort of led on to you, I mean, with the coaching side of it as well. When did the coaching side of it sort of pop its head up to you and you think, oh, that's something I might try?
Well, to be honest, it was those beginner courses that you did. Okay. That was really the first time. So myself and Mo were running the beginners MMA courses at Exile. So I was doing the grappling side, and Mo obviously was doing the striking side.
Yeah.
So they were really successful. We ran quite a few of them. A good percentage of people kept going, so you quite enjoyed it. So that was my first experience, really. And then I was doing more like the fighter side of the coaching at Exile, because obviously at the time I was the most experienced MMA fighter there. So I was sort of coaching the fighters and things there. And then I got into wrestling, my big love now, the wrestling. And when I moved over to NGMA, they sort of they said, well, we want wrestling. Why don't you be our wrestling coach? And at the time I was like, oh no, I can't. I'm not good enough. I'm not a pure wrestler. It's, you know, I didn't feel confident to do that. But lovely Achilles, who you train with at Neon, him and Yanis were my instructors for, you know, a long time. And Achilles was really kind to me. He said, you are good enough. And he gave me a book to follow. He said anytime that I had any worries, I could come to him, which I have done a lot. Mm-hmm. So he gave me the confidence to do that. And then we were fortunate enough at NGMA to have Kane Charig there for a couple of years. So I mean, basically he didn't he left Phoenix, and I basically begged him to come to NGMA because he's obviously one of the top in the UK. Yeah. So now I train under him at the Wessex Olympic Freestyle Wrestling. So I'm very, very fortunate in the fact that I've had some really high, top level, world class wrestling coaches. So I've now taken over the NGMA classes again because Kane moved, but I go to his and train every Tuesday. And I also do the MMA. I've coached MMA for a long time, so God, it's such a huge amount of knowledge you need for that. So a lot of the time I need to, ask other people and, not rely on my own knowledge, but, I'm getting by and enjoying that as well.
So, I mean, you seem to be someone as well, just from watching you over this time. I mean, you're not afraid to go somewhere to train. Like you train. I can remember different things of, like you're saying just now. The different clubs that you're training at for different styles, for different things. I'm pretty sure at one point you're over in Thailand doing kickboxing or something like that. I'm sure I remember that over the time and different
That's
things
right.
like that.
Yeah.
And just different things. So, is that if someone's listening to this and they're just training and they're probably just going to their normal gym once a week, what would you say that? Would you recommend going out and trying different things in different places?
100%. Oh, definitely. I think for any style, especially if you want to compete, it depends what you want out of the sport.
Yeah.
If you're doing it for fitness, that's not so important. You can stay with the same gym or club. I would say if you want to compete, particularly in MMA, you have to go and train in as many places you can, particularly sparring. You can't just spar the same people all the time. Everyone knows what the other person likes doing. You don't challenge each other. Same for grappling, I would say, definitely. So I've trained in as many different gyms, in as many different places as I can. And I would say sort of my main sort of MMA gym now is Crossface in Watford under Dave Lee. He's helped me for many, many years, cornered me for the Snake Pit World Championship as well. So he's a good friend and has, even though I can't train at that gym all the time, he's helped me out massively. And he has UFC fighters, PFL, the Bellator, really high level. So I would recommend go to as many different places as you can.
Excellent. And then, so what is your coaching regime like nowadays? As you say, you're at the NGMA. Tell us a bit about that and what you do there.
So NGMA, so New Generation Martial Arts, is now based over in Woolston. So it's a lovely big facility there. We've got sauna, we've got cage, we've got lots of space for grappling, we've got ring, little cafe. It's absolutely lovely. So on the Mondays, I do a more advanced wrestling. On Wednesdays, I teach MMA at the university. On Thursday, I do beginners wrestling and MMA at NGMA. So I do quite a lot. So it does limit the amount that I can train myself, which is tricky, seeing as I'm still competing in pretty high level competitions. How long I'm going to be able to do that, I don't champion. Know. Yeah, I still can't believe that. I don't really want to say it.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
So I'm not sure, because I'm 45 now as well, which is I'm just amazed I'm in one piece, to be honest. But apart from that, I feel absolutely, fine.
Okay, so the Snake Pit World Championships 2024 catch wrestling. Where did this come from, and how did you end up there?
Well, I actually, my first MMA coach, Dan Bourne, he was from a catch wrestling background. So I'd never heard of it before then, I must admit. But a lot of the things he taught, all the nasty neck cranks and I don't know, like all the nasty submissions, he was really big into leg locks as well, came from the catch wrestling side. So that's how I got introduced to it. Also, Dave Lee is he trains under Eric Paulson, who was also a big player in catch wrestling. So that style of grappling is fantastic for pro MMA. Obviously, a lot of it you can't do in amateur, a lot of illegal submissions. But pro MMA, it's a fantastic style of grappling because also you can't go on your back. So I would say for MMA, I would always say you want to be in top position generally. So the catch you've got the top, you've got nasty submissions, you've got the top wrestling, you've got the pins. Absolutely brilliant for MMA. So that's how I sort of got into it. I wanted to do the Snake Pit World Championships the year before, but I was away, unfortunately. So I was like, right, this year I'm definitely doing it. Because I thought, this is my style of grappling. No one's going to pull guard on me, which happens a lot. We got to wrestle, and the addition of the submissions is a bonus, really, because I love wrestling. But when you can neck crank and arm bar and leg lock as well, I was like, this is great. This is just my thing. So obviously I went along last year. There were only 3 in my division, but to be fair, that was more than I expected.
You hadn't. I can't remember the girl's name. One of them just was fresh off the Olympics, wasn't she?
Well, she didn't make it to the Olympics. She was a wrestler from Australia that had been to the qualifiers for the Olympics, and she'd fought some of the Olympians. Yeah. So I was like, oh.
So they weren't just like, no one walked in off the street in a
oh god, no.
They were all very qualified.
Absolutely. She was the highest level wrestler I've ever competed against. And the trouble is, it's good I knew that, actually, because I didn't know who was in the division until they announced it maybe a week before. So generally when I go into grappling competitions, because the level of wrestling is getting better in England or the UK, but generally I would tend to win the grappling matches I've won using wrestling. So getting takedowns, getting top position. And I thought, when I saw she was in it, I thought, oh no, that's my game plan out the window. I'm not going to be able to out wrestle her. So I was in a bit of a panic mode. But fortunately, in the match against her, she went for a fireman's carry throw. And there's someone I train with at Impact Gym, Joe Taylor. Every time we wrestle, he goes for the fireman. So I'm used to sprawling out on the fireman. It's an instinctive reaction now, thank goodness. If it wasn't, I'd have been thrown. She tried to throw me with the fireman, which I sprawled out on, and I managed to take her back. And at that point, it wasn't the most exciting match in the world, but I could feel her strength, that wrestling strength, of her trying to roll me with the elbow. So I stayed safe. I didn't do anything crazy. I was so worried about ending up on my back, because if I'm against a wrestler, you don't want to try and wrestle a wrestler. You kind of want to maybe go and try and go to guard in grappling, but not in not in catch. Yeah. So I won that on basically decision. But once I'd won that, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I've beat this amazing wrestler. And then Freya, who I fought second, I trained with her before a few years before, so I knew her a little bit. And she'd won the British. So obviously I never underestimate anyone is the biggest mistake you can do in combat sports, in anything actually. So Dave was like, this is the tough match. This is the one, forget about the other one. This is the tough match. This is what stands between you and being a world champion. So he really bigged me up. And I won that one by pin. So yeah, I was so happy.
That's good. Well, what I'll do, I'll find that, because they're on the Snake Pit YouTube channel, so I'll put that match in the notes as well, so anyone can have a look.
Oh, okay, cool.
Crowning achievement, yeah. So I'll find that and put that in for you as well, so everyone can see that.
Cool.
I'm sure they won't mind linking it, because it's their channel and I'm not copying the footage.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I don't know about that.
They'll be right with that, because at least you'll get a hit for it. But okay then. So, a reigning world champion now, moving into 2025. What have you got planned for this year?
Well, my plans keep changing, really, because what I really, really want to do now is I really want to get into basic stunt work, particularly sort of fight scenes, that sort of thing. But it's actually, see, this I did underestimate. I was like, oh, I've done martial arts for years and years, I can just do this. But actually, when it comes to the acting and performance side, when someone's not actually hitting you, or you're not allowed to hit someone, you have to act the fights. It's way harder than actually fighting for real. Obviously, you don't get hurt, but it's a completely different. You have to kind of go against all your natural instincts with it. So I've been doing the courses under the British Action Academy, and they are tough. So that was my plan for this year. I was like, right, I've got to concentrate on this. But then also, I really want to defend the snake pit world title, because I have to win it 3 times to get the belt. So I really want to do that. Also, the British Championship, the Freestyle Wrestling Championships. I really want to go back to that again. And also, I'm doing a show. Dave Lee is running Quadrilinus show on March 16th, and I'm up against Danielle T.A. I hope I've said that right. And she's a black belt jiu-jitsu. So I've got that on March 16th. So I'm like, oh, no.
That's just between now and March for the rest of the year.
Exactly, yeah. So I know the trouble with me is I kind of commit to too much, and obviously I've got my job as well. So so those are the 3 big competitions that I want to do this year. But I also want to try and work on the stunt stuff as well. So that's kind of my plan.
Okay, then, and so that's great. And is there anything else that you just want to get in at the end? Any other bits and pieces that might be coming up, or things people to look out for?
Well, to be honest, I've got we've got a couple of fighters out in a few weeks at the beginning of March. So I need to help them. Yeah, it's very difficult doing the coaching and competing. That is very hard, and it's something I've done for quite a few years. But really, to do it properly, so you need to do one or the other. So I need to help the fighters that have got their fights coming up as well. But so I think just the Dave show, Quadrilinus on March 16th, is my main focus at the moment.
Oh, no, that's great. So if anyone's listening to this and they want to get hold of you or contact you for anything they've got coming up, perhaps there's a film they're making, they need a stunt lady for it, or whatever it might be, what's the best way of getting hold of you and keeping up with what you're up to?
Probably Instagram, to be honest. I don't really use any other social media platforms anymore. I tend to put things on Instagram. So that's probably my Instagram account, which is bryony.killab, is probably the best way to find me.
I can link that for you as well in the notes and that for you. Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with us all today. It's been a pleasure. And as I said, this is all your fault anyway. So
I'm so happy.
No problem. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you very much. Can I just give a shout out to a few people?
Shout out away. Go for it.
I just want to say a massive thank you to obviously NGMA for being amazing, and it's wonderful to coach there, and to Dave Lee at Crossface in Watford for everything he's done for me, and also Wessex Olympic Wrestling Kane Charig, who's absolutely wonderful. I couldn't ask for a better wrestling coach. So they're the 3 main people that I wanted to thank. So give them a shout, come along to the gym, go and train with them if you can, because they're all fantastic.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'll put that, I'll link them in the notes as well for you, so then we can
thank you.
Them. No problem at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right. was the Grapple of Your Eye podcast, episode 7, where we interviewed Bryony Tyrell. Thank you for listening, and if you like what you hear, then please visit the grappleofyoureye.com for everything that we're up to. You can also follow us on all your podcast apps, Spotify, YouTube, or on all those. Please, if you could give us a review or a like and subscribe, that will really help us. It would be very much appreciated. Until then, we'll be back here on the mat next week with another guest.